Hello. So for this video for Thanksgiving/Indigenous Day of Mourning, we're going to talk about Tomson Highway's play, The Rez Sisters. So this is probably one of the most famous Indigenous plays. Highway is possibly, arguably, the most famous First Nations Canadian playwright. And The Rez Sisters is one of his most recognized anthologized works. It's also a difficult play in some ways because the subject matter is quite heavy, at least for portions of it. So the play features a set of sisters and sisters-in-law. Pelagia Patchnose, Philomena Moosetail, who's her sister, Maria Del Starblanket, who's their half-sister, Annie Cook, who's the sister of Maria Del and half-sister of the other two, Emily Dictionary, who is the sister of Annie and Maria Del, and half-sister of Pelagia and Philomena, Veronica St. Pierre, who's the sister-in-law of all of those, and then Zabugian Peterson, who is the adopted daughter of Veronique St. Pierre. She also has a developmental disability, cognitive disability. And then the other character, the only male performed character, is Nanabush, who is a sort of centrally influential figure in the mythology of a lot of First Nations, Native American, and Métis people. Nanabush is a sort of sympathetic trickster figure, and in this play, he sort of largely takes the form of someone who is around. He is a supporter. He is sort of alongside these sisters and sisters-in-law. I'm just going to call them the sisters, right? And he sort of sympathizes with their dreams, their objectives, their suffering, etc., etc. But the play itself, so this is a realist drama, is a fairly gritty drama in which we have pretty severe sexual abuse, we have domestic violence, we have anti-LGBT prejudice and the death of loved ones, etc., etc., alcoholism, poverty, these problems that are endemic to Indigenous reservations especially, but Indigenous life within cities as well, Indigenous life in rural areas, not on reservations, etc., etc., because of the ways in which settler colonialism and capitalism have structured North American societies in Highways Canada and in my country, the U.S. So things like poverty, drug use, violence, etc., etc., are continual components of Indigenous culture because of the ways in which social frameworks have been set up to repress and disenfranchise Indigenous people, particularly Indigenous women, right? There is an epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in North America. And while that has gotten some attention from particularly the Canadian government and sort of Canadian social justice-oriented forces, it has not been addressed in any way that is nearly meaningful enough to fundamentally alter those dynamics, right? So this is the world in which the Rez Sisters find themselves, right? In this world of poverty, of suffering, of limited opportunities, of violence, etc., etc. And one of the major themes of the play that's introduced right from the very beginning is this desire that several of the characters have to escape those circumstances. Whether that's to sort of physically escape or whether that's to emotionally or psychologically escape, right? So some of the characters, like Pelagia in particular, want to physically escape the reservation, this place where they have been sort of culturally confined. But some of the other characters want to sort of emotionally escape, right? They want to escape the things that the reservation represents in terms of the limitations and constrictions imposed on Indigenous people. Again, things like poverty, like alcoholism, like being subject to violence, etc., etc. But we start with this theme, right? This opening thematic. Pelagia is up on top of the roof of her house. She is fixing the roof, nailing shingles on, and she's addressing her sister, Philomena. Pelagia says, "Philomena, I want to go to Toronto." Philomena from offstage says, "Oh, go on." Pelagia says, "Sure as I'm sitting away up here on the roof of this old house. I kind of like it up here, though. From here I can see half of Manitoulin Island on a clear day. I can see the chimneys, the tops of apple trees, the garbage heap behind Big Joey's dumpy little house. I can see the seagulls circling over Maria del Starblanket's white picket fence, boats on the North Channel I wish I was on, sailing away somewhere, the mill at Espanola 100 miles away. But that's just with just a bit of squinting, see? If I had binoculars, I could see the Superstack in Sudbury. And if I were Superwoman, I could see the CN Tower in Toronto. Ah, but I'm just plain old Pelagia Rosella Patchnose, and I'm here in plain, dusty, boring old Wasachigan Hill. Wasi, waiting. So, again, right from the start, we have this theme introduced of wanting to escape. And even though not all of the characters express that desire of wanting to get off of the reservation or wanting to escape or be free as such, they all have something that they want that on some level represents freedom from their current circumstances. So this, of course, is really, really interesting. And what the sisters end up sort of doing is they get word of the biggest bingo in the world. These are all avid bingo players, but the bingo, they observe unfavorably that the bingo pots on the reservation have gotten smaller and smaller. There's less point in playing. But they still go and play, because this is another interesting component of this, right? Where this communal activity, this ritual activity of going and playing bingo becomes a social unifying force, right? Because oftentimes when they talk about the bingo, they're not just talking about the actual game itself, the prizes, things like that. And they do talk about those things, but they also talk about the people at the bingo, right? They talk about these different women who, some of them are terrible bingo players, some of them are incredible bingo players. They talk about this one woman, if I can find the bit, Bingo Betty, who played, I forget how many cards it was, I want to say 27. Yeah. So Bingo Betty played 27 cards at a time. She was just that good, right? So there's, again, this sense of community that is created from this particular event. It is a way of socially organizing. But the other component of this is that it represents the possibility of money, prizes, and money represents freedom, right? It represents freedom from the constrictions of the reservation with its associated poverty, etc., right? And so this is a big thing, right? They, again, hear about the biggest bingo in the world, and they decide that they are going to raise money, and they are going to go to the biggest bingo in the world, and they are going to try and win money so they can do the things that they want to do. And again, for some of them, that is, I want to leave. For some of them, that is, I want to get a specific thing, right? Like, I think it's Philomena who wants a white porcelain toilet, right? That's her big ambition. And again, it's not, that isn't sort of freedom from the reservation as such. It's not, I want to leave this place. It is, I want to have this thing that in my mind stands for luxury, represents luxury, reflects the good life, right? And so this is the sort of component of it, right? This is part of what the bingo does and is in this play, is it reflects the possibility of a better life that is not limited by the conditions in which these women find themselves. That being said, the conditions in which these women find themselves are often extraordinarily brutal, right? Because of the ways in which settler colonialism and capitalism and patriarchy have structured the world around these women. So Zebunigan's experience is one of the most graphic and brutal. And Zebunigan's experience is inspired or sort of aligned with the violent rape and murder of Helen Betty Osborne, more commonly known as Betty Osborne. In 1986, she was brutally raped and murdered by 4 white men. There was no trial at the time. I think it was 17 years or something like that before there were any sort of trials. And even then, only one of the perpetrators was ever convicted. And Zebunigan's experience is inspired by Osborne's brutal death. I'm going to read it to you because it is extraordinarily painful, but it's also something that, again, is horrifically common for Indigenous women and girls in North America. So Zebunigan, who, again, has some sort of disability, she tells her story to the audience, and as she does, what the stage directions say is, Nanabush goes through agonizing contortions. So Nanabush becomes sort of implicated in the suffering of this young woman. So Zebunigan, in talking to Nanabush, says, "Are you gentle? I was not little, maybe. Same size as now. Long ago it must be. You think I'm funny? I know who you are. There, boys, white boys, 2. Ever nice white wings, you. I was walking down the road to the store. They asked me if I want ride in car. Oh, I was happy. I said, yup. They took me far away. Ever nice ride. Dizzy. They took all my clothes off me. Put something inside me here," pointing to her crotch underneath her dress. "Many, many times. Remember, don't fly away. Don't go. I saw you before. There. It was a screwdriver. They put the screwdriver inside me. Here. remember, ever lots of blood, the two white boys. Left me in the bush, alone. I was cold. And then, remember, Zaboonigan. Everyone calls me Zaboonigan. Why? It means needle. Zaboonigan, going through thing. Needle Peterson, going through thing Peterson. That's me. It was the screwdriver. Nice, nice. Nicky, Ricky, Ben, Mark. As she counts with each name feathers on the bird's wing. Ever nice, nice white birdie, you. Yeah, I mean, it's fucking horrific. And yet it is, again, based in this real experience. Betty Osborne was abducted by a group of white men. She was raped repeatedly by them, and then she was stabbed to death repeatedly with a screwdriver and left in, I can't remember if it was the woods or where exactly it was, but she was left just out in the wilderness. And she never really got justice. And again, I think this is, while that's incredibly, incredibly horrific, I think it's something that Highway's play is trying to come to terms with, right? The limitations faced by Indigenous people in trying to get justice, trying to get opportunities, trying to, get even the most sort of basic human consideration within settler, colonial, capitalist, and patriarchal societies that are fundamentally arrayed against their basic human rights.